There you are. Happy Halloween, buddy. Okay, so what I did is I created um, the tier list for classic horror IPs. And when I say classic, I mean it can go all the way up until like, late 90s, early 2000s, but an IP franchise that has lasted multiple movies in a series. So I didn't put it in any order. The way that I was doing it, I was just kind of uploading them as we go. We have 19 of them. So these are the categories that we have here. We have can't sleep. I think, in your opinion, probably half of these would go in that. Gives me chills, good scares, good concept, doesn't faze me, and it's a kids movie.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of those?
Those are good. I like it instead of being just like best as far as like quality and just more like how scary it is. So I think it's perfect because what I haven't seen, like, because these are, there's a lot of movies in the series. I definitely haven't all the movies, but I kind of haven't seen enough to like give each of these to know generally how the tone is.
What the idea of it is, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, and I wanted to do it based on like scariness, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not like how good. Like, let's be real. If you and me are such like we're such critical people when it comes to critiquing a movie that most of these are going to be like a 7 and under. So I obviously didn't want to do that. Let's just start kind of from, I don't know. Let's start with Invisible Man. Let's start down here. Because it's probably one of the more, like, unknown ones that people might not be familiar with.
We're looking at, like, all the Invisible Man movies, or just...
Yeah, like everything that has to do... So, I mean, there's the classic Invisible Man from, like, the 50s. There's a Hollow Man with Kevin Bacon. That was like late 90s, I feel. Then there was the one just a few years ago with Elizabeth. What's her name? What is her name? Look, you're looking it up right now. I'm sure you are. And that, I think, was called The Invisible Man, and it was awesome. That was, as a movie, for what it was and for the genre, I would give it like a 9.5 out of 10.
Elizabeth Moss,
great film.
Yeah,
so there's
that movie. The new one was like a psychological mind trip where it just like her going crazy, basically, and that was kind of the whole point, was like trying to make her go crazy.
Did you see it?
Yeah.
Did you like it?
It was good. Yeah,
I thought it exceeded my expectations tremendously. So I thought, okay, so I just kind of put it under good scares because, I think gives me. I don't know. I think
I wouldn't put it that high.
I would probably put it had good scares because
it was like good. It was like a lot of, and I'm thinking more of like the more recent version. I don't even know if I've seen the old version of it, and I've seen Hollow Man, which is not that scary. Right. And then there's a Dick Chevy Chase Invisible Man movie, which isn't scary at all.
Okay.
But which doesn't try to be.
Right, it's Chevy Chase.
But the Elizabeth Moss version, it's really just like slow. I mean, like not slow bad, but just kind of like it's just tense, and just like you just see her like mind unraveling.
It builds, yeah, totally. In the most perfect way though. Good scares. Because there's so many multiple films and they're all kind of they all are very similar in its own way. But I think in general, they're all very entertaining. I think that it's better than good concept because they are successful with they accomplish what they're trying to do with the Invisible Man. It's very good. All right, good scares. Moving on. I think we're gonna start. Let's start down the bottom and work our way up there. Frankenstein, I think, is also good scares. There hasn't been a recent movie of Frankenstein in like 40 years or something. I don't know. I'm sure there has. Some like B movies.
No, I mean there was a Robert De Niro version, and I also think there was a version with James McAvoy and Daniel Radcliffe too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I think I don't know if James McAvoy was in the play, but there was like a play that I believe Daniel Radcliffe was in. It's weird because he plays like Daniel Radcliffe plays Igor, and
Like it.
Frankenstein, who's the actual doctor, sees him. He's like, hey. Eventually, at one point, he's like, "That's not." He's like, "That's not a hump. It's a giant cyst." He basically like pins him down and like gets this big.
So they can just technically take a giant needle and pop it, and there goes his,
he just
hunch.
sucks out whatever in it, and then he just basically like cracks his back like in an extreme way to like make him upright, and all of a sudden he becomes like hot Igor.
I like it. Is it a spoof or is it like?
No, it's a serious movie.
I gotta see that. All right. Yeah. I know like the Boris. I think Boris Karloff was in this one. Was in the original one. But there's been like the Bride of Frankenstein, many of them, and they're creepy, man. They're very, very creepy scenes. I mean, and then you look at like Young Frankenstein, which is obviously a spoof, and it's one of my favorite movies of all time. By the way, top 10 favorite movies for me.
I can't sleep when I watch that.
But I think this is under good scares. It's classic. It's still very entertaining, and it holds up because it's. Nowadays, I think the concept wouldn't bode well in terms of like, hey, we're trying to, be scary and terrifying. But for what it is, the Frankenstein movies are very fun, good scares. All right, Final Destination, I would say gives me chills.
Okay.
And here's why, dude. It's very real life stuff that's happening. Okay, hear me out though.
If a perfect storm happened and everything in the world went wrong.
But that happens. That happens in real life. Now, does death actually chase someone and makes, like, the gas to turn on, and then this thing flickers, and then the candle falls, and then this thing ignites, and all this stuff? That happens because weird things happen, but not to the extent of the movie. But I think I saw it when I was younger. I mean, it's an older movie, dude. That's like 2000.
No, there's a series, so there's
right, and this
are there like 5,
bro, and like I think the last one might be one of the best ones too. Might be because the last one, and now we're talking semantics. Now we're talking details of the movie that make that like the story and whatnot. I think the horror factor holds like, yeah, it's like 5 movies. A few of them are ridiculous, and you're like, it's more of a blood and gore slasher movie at that point. But it's still very like, there's scenes that you're like, dude, what's gonna happen? And they make such a good job of like, the scene unravels. You know they're gonna die, but you don't know how they're gonna die. But you know something's gonna happen, and you think it's gonna be the light is flickering, and you're like, oh, somehow he's gonna get electrocuted, and then he dies a completely different way. And it just is kind of it messes with your mind. Like, it's a mind fuck, right? So, it literally gave me the chills for such a long time after I saw the first one. I didn't want to open up my closet because I was afraid something was going to fall down and, like, decapitate my head or something. I don't know. Gives me the chills.
Yeah, I mean, eventually it just turned into, the scenes just turned into, okay, what kind of scenario how crazy and absurd can we make this scenario to where
some of the movies, yes,
things happen in order for somebody to get some brutal death. Like, it's not like all the stuff happens and then they're just in a car accident. It's like they get decapitated.
Dude, but that car accident scene is one of the coolest scenes in any movie.
The log stuff, yeah, where the log comes in, but dude, everything else.
That log, you're telling me that you didn't have that log scene stuck in every time you go behind a truck with lumber? You're telling me that didn't go in the back of your head?
I don't know. Every time I see one of those like transport trailers, I just want to jump on it and treat it like a ramp, and then
like a Fast and the Furious movie.
Well, I would say Dukes of Hazzard.
Or Dukes of whatever. Gone in 60 seconds. They're all the same.
If it was Fast and Furious, they would like jump off of it, and then like somehow rockets would shoot out of the car and they start flying.
An explosion would happen. Okay.
And then the Rock would jump on top of the car and start surfing.
I know for a fact
onto a plane.
Plenty of people have watched Final Destination, and the second one is the one with the logs, I think, or maybe the third one. But the log scene, man, it's so well done. Dude, I think it totally freaks me out. 100%. It gives me chills. But no, you're right, not the whole thing. So maybe it's good scares. Maybe it's on the top of the line of good scares. I think Frankenstein's above Invisible Man. I don't know. I mean, all right, we'll put it on the top of good scares. All right, we'll put it on top of there. The Mummy.
That one doesn't do anything for me.
Nah, I would say it's a good concept.
Yeah, I mean, there's the old Mummy, and then there's the new with Tom Cruise on, which wasn't that
Which was
good.
bad, actually.
And just an idea of, I mean,
well, here's the thing.
Even if you think of even the Brendan Fraser versions, those aren't even scary, right? Those are just action movies.
No, but they're fun, and it's a good.
Concept. But it's not. That's why maybe it falls in a good concept because it's not.
When
scary.
I was little, I mean, that movie's in like what 97, 98, and the first Mummy, out of the newer trilogy Mummy movies with Brendan Fraser, it kind of creeped me out as a kid. I definitely was like scared, but as adults, I mean, I would say it's more of a good concept. It's not really scary too much. There's the classic Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy, which I love. I don't even know if you've seen that. I love it so much. For whatever reason, I had that on VHS, and I love that movie. I would put under good concept. It's one of the more it's a classic monster movie, right? It's one of the most classic monster movies there is, and for its time, it was very creepy. Invisible Man holds up a little bit better, I think, than this one, and actually has probably better scenes and things that creep you out because maybe it's a little bit more like a psychological mind fuck, and it does kind of creep you out, as opposed to the Mummy is like, dude, a guy wrapped in cloth, like a zombie. He's a zombie wrapped in cloth.
The one that just like slowly, creeping towards you, and
right.
It's like scary to like the person, but like as a viewer, like, what are they gonna do? Yeah.
It's one of those, like, can't you just run away from him? I think you run way faster than the Mummy. The remake, and I think they were maybe going to make it a series with Tom Cruise, but the movie didn't work out, so.
Well, they're trying to reboot. They're trying to start up a dark, like, because everything had to be a universe, right? They were trying to do a dark universe, because I think they were treating...
Oh, really?
Benicio del Toro's Wolfman as like one of the first ones.
It's like 10 years apart.
Yeah, well, maybe there's a different one.
They were trying
to treat those like old school movies. They're trying to reboot.
You're
them.
right.
Like,
Universal. What I remember. I sorry to cut you off. Universal was gonna do that. I totally remember that now. Yeah.
Yeah, and that movie killed it.
Yeah, but it was also 10 years later after Wolfman. But yeah, good point. Maybe they'll go back, and I mean, we'll talk about Wolfman.
Maybe they're building a I don't know what they're calling it, but I think in one of the Universals, I think probably Orlando, they're building like a dark universe area
in the new park. Yeah, and I think 2025, I think, was when that park opened. So yeah, I mean, I'm excited for that because if you look at Universal and some of the most classic films, you think of the classic monsters, right? Frankenstein, Invisible Man, Mummy. Down here we have Dracula, Wolfman. So yeah, I mean, I hope that they start focusing back on kind of how they got to where they are. But okay, this will stay under good concept. Saw. Now I'm gonna let you pick where Saw goes, and then if it doesn't go where I think it should, where I think it should go.
I say this because it either for me probably gives me chills, only because I won't watch them anymore. I saw the first one. The first one's really good, and not saying that none of them are good. I was watching the second one, and when they got to the scene where the key or whatever they needed was in a pit full of needles,
and they stick their hand in there.
No, they didn't stick their hand. Somebody jumped in, and I just turned it off. I'm like, I'm done. That was just it. That wasn't like, I get that's what some people are into. I couldn't deal with it. I'm like, it was just too gory, and it was a bit much for me. And so I was like, I say it's high up there only because I won't really watch them anymore.
I was gonna put it under gives me chills as well. because the concept itself is amazing. Like,
Yeah.
it's super creepy and scary, and it's very. I would say it's. I don't know if any like mass murderer has gone to the extent in real life what this guy did in the movie, but for what it is, it's very graphic, very bloody and gory.
Mm-hmm.
And that sometimes can be so over the top. You're like, whatever. Like, it's just blood. Okay, but what's happening in the scene, and then on top of that, for how gory it is, it seems very real, and it does kind of hit you in the heart of like,
I mean,
this is too much.
scene
Yeah.
for like someone's got to dig into their eye in order to get a key or something. When I don't know how to get that key in the first place, but it's stuff like that. They gotta like basically like, brutalize themselves in order to escape, and that's kind of.
And as an audience,
That's what they do in the first one, but they just kind of take that to the extreme. Like, how far are you willing to go to live?
as an audience too, you're thinking of, is this too much? Like, what would I do? You're thinking, what would I do? Is that something I would do? You know? Oh yeah, it's rough. Definitely gives me chills. Very gory. The story is whatever. But if you're looking for, it's kind of a cheap. There's like 6 of them. Like, there's so many Saw movies. Most of them are bad. They get worse and worse and worse. But yeah, I mean, it's still completely creepy, and it's one of those things that it emotionally affects you. It emotionally affected you so much that after halfway through the second movie, you couldn't continue. Like, it is, yeah. All right. So it gives me chills. That'll be on the first on that list. Or we got the Hannibal Lecter IP. Silence of the Lambs. We got Hannibal. We got Red Dragon. We got the series.
Yeah, Manhunter is
Manhunter.
The original film version of where that features Hannibal Lecter. I mean, I think it's at least gives me chills, if only for Silence of the Lambs. I mean, I thought Red Dragon was pretty good. Hannibal was
creepy.
On the gory side,
it was
scary, but
it's psychotic.
Creep, like even the final scene in Silence of the Lambs where she's got the night vision on, and he's got the night vision on. He's like reaching for her.
Right.
Oh, that whole scene is so intense.
Right. No, you're right. Yeah, that's a very intense scene. Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I think also, I think the best one out of them is Silence of the Lambs, and it's incredibly creepy. I think then the second one was Hannibal, and I think it's a very it's kind of a psychological thriller, but I think some of it's very psychotic. Yeah. Like, I don't know if you remember the scene where he's like peeling off that guy, or that guy peels off his face because he's all like, I don't know if you remember. Like,
yeah, when he gets captured by Gary Oldman's character and his face is all fucked up, is because he basically he was this professor or something, gave him a bunch of drugs and told him to keep like cutting his face and eating it.
Right.
And then
Dude, that messed me up.
Yeah,
that messed me up. And I think the whole property of Hannibal Lecter is one of the creepiest things you can put. And also Anthony Hopkins just crushes that role, and dude, that man is so possessed in those movies. It's awesome. Definitely gives me chills. Definitely up there. Okay.
I'll say also, don't forget where he feeds Liotta his own brain.
Oh my gosh, and that's in Hannibal.
Yeah.
Dude. Oh my gosh, I forgot that scene. And he's still like alive.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, he's
cooking it, and you can smell it, but he's like so messed up that he doesn't know. Like his head is off. He's like crap. The skull is off.
But that is a super messed up scene. Yeah, man. I thought all 3 of those, and then Ralph in Red Dragon. What's the actor's name? The guy that
Ralph Fiennes.
Ralph Fiennes.
It looks like it's pronounced Ralph, but it's Rafe.
Ralph Fiennes. Ralph Fiennes, who's Voldemort, right? One of the greatest actors. That guy, I mean, and crushes that role. So you get, not only do you get Anthony Hopkins playing his role, but then you get Ralph Fiennes' character just as psychotic. Like I thought the trilogy was fantastic.
Yeah, and then when he captures Philip Seymour Hoffman's character, who is like
sets him on fire.
Yeah, well, but he tortures him. Basically, Edward Norton's character sets him up because he's just like a writer, so he gets
He's
him
like a reporter,
in a
yeah.
way he gets him killed because gets him to like write the story that just embarrasses him, and then so he captures him and like kind of goes to like shows off how he transforms, shows his
Right.
tattoo, and goes to the whole art piece, and he's like, "Oh, I don't want to watch this. I don't."
That's correct. I forget. See, man, you're. I'm surprised you saw those. To be honest, I know you don't like horror, but I think
I get like the supernatural stuff is what gets me. I
okay.
mean, that one. I mean, what they were kind of gory and stuff, and so a lot of like this supernatural stuff.
I think okay. All right, you're right. Okay, I think horror in general, you're not turned off by it, but I think certain categories, subcategories within horror is something some of them you'll never watch because you know you won't enjoy them. But I also think, and so some of the subcategories like psychological mindfucked movies like the Hannibal series, the cast, it's well written, it's well directed, you know it's gonna like it's a good, you know, I think cast has a lot to do with it for you. I could be wrong. I think it has a lot to do with you.
Like, they all have good casts. Like, I mean, obviously,
And that's why and I think that and even if you're like, it might be kind of might freak me out, I think you'd be willing to watch it because of the cast. Am I wrong?
Yeah, because I mean, because when they get a good cast, you know, it's not just going to be like cheap scared. Like they're going to build it up and have a story around it and have good characters and
Right.
So I know there's going to be more to it than just the horror elements,
right,
or anything gory. So
that's what I was getting at. Yeah,
substance to it other than just the scares and gore.
Yeah. All right, and that's up there, man. Gives me chills. I don't know. Can't sleep, man. I don't want to say it's because me personally, I love horrors so much that it takes a lot to kind of affect me. And if we're just talking about general like famous IP movies, I don't know if any of these are going to be under Can't Sleep. I'm just throwing that out there. But moving on, we got Halloween. I think I'm going to put it under Good Scares. I think it's scarier than Frankenstein. I think it's it's a jump scare type of movies for the most part. And I think jump scares are based on the audio, the music that builds up. Something that I've always, and it's very entertaining, it's very fun. If you're looking at a slasher movie, this is probably the epitome of a slasher movie. That and maybe a couple other ones down here, but no, it's really good. But I don't think it doesn't affect me to the point that I'm kind of like creeped out. Now, Good Scares, it's under Good Scares because I might jump, and I might be because the music. You know what you're jumping at? The music. Half the time, I don't. Well,
they do it all the time. They time the music they
it's almost like when you go to like a, how when you go like every week to like a live studio audience showing, right? That happens to everyone all the time, and then you have the clap, applaud now. That's kind of what the audio does for you. It's kind of like, okay, get scared now. Like the audio kind of does that for the audience. It's a cue to be scared, and I think that's a little bit of a cheap thrill, a cheap way to do it, but
a lot of movies do that. I mean,
right, but they're
happening on there do that,
right, and they even in Frankenstein and whatever, like they've been doing that with music forever. But I think Halloween is one of the first slasher movies that kind of just like, this is gonna be kind of how this is our format, our formula, right? Is we're gonna build the music and then jump scare and something's gonna pop out or something. And then after that, you're like, oh, that was a good scare. And then you can, and then they're being, murdered or whatever, slashed. And then you're like, okay, whatever, moving on. They're fun. The original ones are better than the Rob Zombie ones, I would say. And then
I didn't even bother seeing the Rob Zombie.
And then when they kind of brought back the new trilogy.
They brought in Jamie Lee Curtis for them.
Yeah, Jamie Lee Curtis is in them as well. And those are pretty good. I just saw the most recent one, Halloween Ends, and it was terrible. Absolutely terrible. Michael Myers is in it for like 10 minutes in the whole movie. I'm not going to go through the story or anything because it's a waste of time. It's completely like one of the worst, like if not the worst Halloween movie I've seen, and I'm really bummed that that's kind of how they ended that little trilogy. But I think they're super fun. I think it's super iconic. I would say it's probably higher than Final Destination Under Good Scares. Now, again, we're not going over like our favorite movies or our favorite horror movies, because this would be higher than Saw. We're going under just the scare factor. So I think just for that, I think it's under Good Scares. Have you seen any of them?
I've seen the original, and then I've seen some of the follow-ups, like the early ones. I think they had some like in the late '80s or.
Oh
80s.
yeah, they had a lot.
And they had like the original Doctor like was in there. Donald Pleasant, that's who it was. Donald Pleasant was the Doctor, who was also Blofeld in the original or in the early James Bond movies.
Okay. So I mean, do you argue with that under Good Scares?
Not good, but I mean, a lot of those might be good scared because it's
just a fun.
That's why I don't get into those kind of movies because it's really relies on jump scares and music to like drive you to be scared and not necessarily like making you earn it.
Right. They don't really earn the scare that much.
It's all that. It's either it's a build up,
but they already know they have the audience,
and then it's like scare, or it goes ooh, and it's like, oh, it wasn't there, and then it's there.
Right.
And you're like the fakes, like you build it up like it's gonna be scary, like, oh, okay, it's okay.
Those are fun though. Those are fun. The fake scares, you're like, oh, it wasn't really it, and then like they open up a closet and nothing's there. They're like, whew, and then they turn around and the killer's there. You know, yeah. Here am I creating my own horror scene. Okay. And then we have George Romero's the Dead movies. He made a handful of the like Land of the Dead, Dawn of the Dead. I'm just gonna go with all, and then the remake of Dawn of the Dead. So the intellectual property of the Dawn of the Dead movies. I mean, there's like 7 or 8 of them. There's a lot of different ones.
Well, I mean, it's the walking, not the. Night of the Living Dead.
Night of the Living Dead, all of those, yeah. So obviously, Night of the Living Dead was. Oh wait, no, wait. Night of the Living Dead was before the Dawn of the Dead.
That was like a 60s.
That was like in the Actually, by the way, Night of the Living Dead was the first movie where the main characters was one a Black American and a white American. That was the first movie ever in film history that had a black and white person as the heroes. But anyways, so I love these movies, and again, we're not going but I think it's scary as hell, man. Some of them are very good. They're jump scares, as well as the concept of 100 cannibals running after you to eat you. That doesn't freak you out.
Yeah, and they've changed it so much over time too, where like it was the slow, creepy ones, and then they just all got faster.
Right, and the concept of zombie movies, I mean, I'm super biased. I think zombie, when it comes to like sci-fi or horror, zombie is my favorite type of genre ever out of any of those. But with that being said, I mean, some of them they're just some, like Land of the Dead. There was one in like the mid 2000s that was incredibly cheesy, where zombies were picking up like assault rifles and shooting people. But yeah, I mean, besides the really cheesy ones, they're really well made and they're very scary, and the concepts are like, I think about it often.
Like the one like in the mall was so good, where they're just kind of trapped in a mall.
That was the Dawn of the Dead remake in like
yeah, you're not.
That was like 2005, 2006. Yeah,
I think it had like Ving Rhames in it.
Yeah, you had a handful of people.
I think that was that one was Zack Snyder did that.
Really? And it had the dad from
Are you even talking about from
Modern Family? Modern Family. Yes.
That's ABC.
ABC. Yeah. Oh, ABC. Modern Family. The guy from Modern Family. Like, and that was before Modern Family. So there is a handful of great actors in that movie that were kind of like a little bit before their time, before they got big. So great cast. Great writing. I loved it, man. It had the kid from Air Bud, and he's an adult in it. Which I totally like the whole time. I'm like, dude, that's the kid from Air Bud. I loved it, man. And the creepy, very intense scenes. It's very gory, but the goriness it's gruesome, but it's literally another person ripping you apart by their bare hands. Like that like it gives me the chills 100%. I love it, man. I don't want to
Yeah,
say
I mean, that might have been. I mean, I know obviously there's a lot of zombie movies and stuff out there, but I think it was probably definitely a precursor to like what Walking Dead did. It's just like,
oh
how
yeah.
can we make these kills just like even more
Oh,
gory?
dude, I would. I mean, without Dawn of the Dead and the original Night of the Dead and all those, I mean, there would be like no 28 Days Later. There would be no like Walking Dead. Yeah, I mean, this thing paved the way. Super awesome. And then here we got Friday the 13th. Or no, I'm sorry. This is Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah,
Nightmare on Elm Street.
those ones I think is a little higher. Yeah,
I would say
that was
gives me the
like growing
chills.
up. Like those games, obviously the original is good. I watched like the other ones. I remember probably the one I've seen the most is 4. Just because for some reason, just when I think when the time it came out and it was always on, either it was always on cable or somebody I knew had VHS. I just watched.
Yeah.
That was the one where she actually, the girl, I think she was like in the third one, and then she they continue with her in the fourth, and she ends up learning to fight, and she just basically like karates Freddy's ass and just beats him up.
But it's scary, man. Like
Yeah.
it's the idea of you can't fall asleep, that alone, and then they crush it when it, well, not, some of the movies are very, very bad and cheesy, and even in those there's still good enough scenes where it gives you the chills, it creeps you out. But the well-made movies of Nightmare on Elm Street, like, dude, it's tense, man. I'm my butt cheeks are clenched. Like, dude, the first one, I mean, what's his name dies, which if he was in the movie now, he probably wouldn't be the first one to die. Yeah, Depp is like one of the first guys that.
Yeah, that's the bed scene.
That's the thing. He gets sucked in and gets eaten up.
They had. I think that was one where they started getting really clever with kills. I mean, that one, like the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, are where it wasn't just like a slasher, and it was
because it's a nightmare, right? So yeah,
but yeah, they got a lot more creative with how people died. I remember, I think it was the fourth one too, where one of the girls, she falls asleep in class, and Freddy's there. He's like, she's freaked out. He's there. He's like, "Hey, you want to suck face?" And he just grabs her face and just like, and she just kind of shrivels and dies.
Oh my god, yeah, dude, creepy. That, like, there's no way you're watching that scene and you're like, you're like, no. Even if the movie in general is bad, there's still scenes and it still gives you the chills where you're like, oh, that's messed up, man. It's gonna.
I dressed up as Freddy Krueger one Halloween when I was a kid, and I had like
the claws,
tinfoil. I had like a glove, and I used like tinfoil to like create this glove.
If you have a picture of
then
that,
they had it where you just buy like the glove and.
Yeah, the hat.
I mean, like in the '80s, like he's so
the Where's Waldo shirt. Yeah.
Yeah, like the green and red.
Yeah, love it, man. All right, that's definitely up there.
I didn't see the remake though. I did not see that one. It did get a little, and I mean we'll get into the 13th movie, but they started all getting a little silly toward the end. To the point where they just got fun, and I think I was talking to somebody at work about that.
Well, dude, there's Freddy versus Jason.
They get so silly, but they start becoming fun because they know what they are, and they're just having fun with it.
Tongue in cheek.
Seriously. Yeah, tongue in cheek.
Yeah, totally. I love it, man. I mean, there's Freddy vs. Jason, for crying out loud. Like, that's a movie.
Yeah. Well, tell me somebody about. Well, no, right. We'll get into it.
Yeah, we'll get there. Okay.
Yeah.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre has got to be.
Yeah. Well, you gotta love it because you play that game.
Bro, that game doesn't make. It's not scary. I know it's scary.
That game is basically this concept.
It is. So 100% is. This right here, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, has got to be one of the scariest concepts and brutal movies, I think, to date.
Literally based on a real thing.
Right, dude. It is completely insane. I would put it under. I don't know if it should be Lecter though. I don't know, man. You think it's...
Well, it is, in a way, could be a little bit more gory. Where Silence of the Lambs is very suspenseful.
It's a psychological type of...
Texas Chainsaw is just chase,
Scary.
kill, or be killed, or get just brutally mutilated.
Brutally mutilated by the craziest family on earth.
Mm-hmm.
And that there's no fantasy sci-fi aspect of it.
The problem is it's like it is so real.
It's so real
that you could be like, oh shit, you could just get like go to the wrong house and get fucked up.
Yeah. Oh, 100, yeah, you get stranded in the wrong part of the neighborhood, and nope, you're in a farmhouse and you're stuck there for life, and you're gonna get mutilated and murdered. And he wears people's skin on his face, bro. It's so messed up, man. Like that movie, and I still get creeped out when I watch him, and I can't help but watch them because there's something in me. There's something in it as a human being, or you want to see what scares you, right? And I think that like this really is one of the scariest movies. Terrifying. Have you seen that? Have you seen all of them? Have you seen any of them?
I believe I've seen the original, and I've seen.
I would put this under Can't Sleep because
the one that had like Matthew McConaughey.
I'm gonna put this under Can't Sleep because if you saw this, you would. I think out of all these movies, this movie would affect you the most by far. By far, I think it's incredibly freaky. The second movie is with Dennis Hopper, and he's like a sheriff, and it has a very much of a goofy aspect to it. It has a very silly early 80s vibe to it. But all the other ones, even the ones with like Jessica Biel, dude, that one's super messed up. That one came out when I was in high school, and I had a friend over, my buddy Brent, like one of my best friends, and I was like in 10th grade maybe, and he was staying the night, and we were playing video games all night. And back then, 10th grade, so I don't remember 2004 or something. We didn't have YouTube. You couldn't have access to they didn't have as many movies now that they had all the time, access to everything. So when you can see a trailer, it was a big deal. So I was able to, I had to like download the trailer somehow, or I don't remember what I did. Maybe, I don't, but I showed him the trailer and he got so scared. He was like, because the trailer itself did you see the Jessica Biel one? Bro, my buddy had to call his mom and ask him to come home, and asked her to pick him up so he could go home. And dude, I was scared. I mean, 2003. Okay, so I was like 15, 14, or about to be 15 or something. And it was scary, man. And I do the idea of that and how brutal the movie is. And there is no forgiveness. There's no empathy in any way when it comes to making that. Like the writer of those movies are like, they may all die, and then that might be the movie. And some of them, sometimes a person escapes. Some of them, maybe nobody escapes. There's a remake of Netflix within the last year or two that I didn't see because I heard it was one of the worst movies ever made. Like I just heard it's absolutely terrible, but. Definitely, it's up the concept and the way that the movies are, and especially the old ones. The original one is completely messed up. I think it's awesome, so that's up there. Hellraiser. Did you see any of these?
Long time ago, not to the point where
Yeah, I saw the first like 3 or 4 just for the shits and giggles, just to be like, okay, I actually saw it. It wasn't very memorable.
Yeah, to me it wasn't. Like I remember, like I only can remember when they were like on like sequels, and it was like Clive Barker. I mean, the villain looked scary and stuff, but I never really got into them.
It was creepy.
I might say it's a good. I mean, just because I haven't really seen them much, I might say good concept because it's like seems kind of cool. Where it's like it is, the story behind it and things. It could be cool. There's a new I don't know if it's
there's a series
Netflix or Hulu or something. There's a new movie that came.
It's on Hulu, I think. I heard that it wasn't very good, but I definitely want to take time to see it sometime though. But it's not memorable. I think the concept itself it's okay. I don't think that they were able to come through with the translation of that into film. I thought, I mean, it's like an early to mid 80s horror, and I think around the 80s, the era of the 80s was very like kind of cheesy in general.
Yeah.
Especially if you're gonna start a brand new franchise, like it's kind of a silly.
Yeah, I mean they had the 13th movies and then Nightmare on Elm Street, and I think they're starting to try and take advantage of the rise in horror franchises.
Yeah,
I don't know anybody who really was it.
and that's fine. I don't have a lot to say about it. Some of it was kind of creepy, but really it's just kind of like blood. Like some of it's bloody.
Mm-hmm.
Like really graphic, like the hook into the people's faces and tear his body apart, and that's pretty graphic and kind of freaky, but like that's all there is to the movie. Like none of it, like there's like hellions and demons that in the later movies that like come down from hell or come up from hell and do all that. And there's one movie I think that someone goes into hell and is trying to but it's all a blur because it's all just very poorly written. None of it's interesting. It didn't capture my attention by any means. So whatever, that's gonna stay there. We got Candyman. I think
that one gets that one at least gives me chills.
Does
I don't know if it does for you. Why it gives me chills is because I grew up with the Bloody Mary superstition.
Oh yeah.
I mean, basically it's a rip off. It's a rip off, but it's a take on the Bloody Mary.
Yeah.
Thing, and I like when I was a kid, I wouldn't do it. Like it was always a thing. Like, oh, you say Bloody Mary 3 times in the mirror, she'll appear. I would never do it, and so it kind of reminded me of that, and like and the stuff with the hook and the bees, and I don't know. That one did freak me.
It is. It's very. I would put it up here as well. It gives me chills. I think it's very scary and it's very creepy, and in the movie it's very tense. Like you're not a movie that you're constantly feeling uncomfortable because you don't know what's gonna happen. So you're constantly giving you chills. Like yeah, I mean they did their job with that movie. They did a good job. I know that they made a second one, and then I saw the remake of it recently, and the remake was okay. I thought the original was a little bit creepier, but it was good. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's creepier, scarier than Nightmare on Elm. Would you say Nightmare on Elm goes there, or you think a Nightmare on Elm's creepier than the zombie movies?
I think Nightmare on Elm Street series is creepier.
Okay, we'll leave it there. How's that? You think the Dawn of the Dead movies are not as scary as Candyman?
Yeah, I think, but it's because it gets the
supernatural stuff. Yeah, okay. We get the Scream movies, and it's just good fun, man. It's not scary. And I think I'm gonna move it up here because, it's the jump scares are very good. I just don't think it's. It's like a cheap mystery horror. Like you don't know who the killer is, and it's kind of fun to see who it is. The writing of the movies aren't good enough. What makes a scary movie is when you're invested into it. When you're invested into a movie and you're like, dude, this is real. Like this is is this person gonna survive? And then when you're more invested, you're more captivated and you're more focused into the film, which if something happens, it affects you more, which can scare you more. Now, in Scream, I don't give a crap about any of the characters, like, ever. Like, in any of them. I just don't. Like, the writing's just not good enough. It's fun. You're familiar. It's the same characters as the series moves on, more or less. But I don't care enough about the characters. It's just a good, fun series. Scream is fun. It's good.
Yeah, and if you think about it, all it is just a slasher. In a way, it's like Halloween, but they move faster and they use phones.
Right, and they use phones.
But it's just a guy like in a Halloween mask just chasing people. Like they see him, and they usually just kind of run, and then they get like cornered and killed.
And I'm gonna be honest, if Scary Movie never existed, this might be have hit the longevity of Scream might have lasted longer. But as soon as Scary Movie came out in like 1999 or whatever, the Scream,
Some parodies can just kill original when you just kind of
yeah, then you're like, oh, this is just silliness. It's just
you start
fun.
remembering when the parody becomes more entertaining than the original.
But the jump scares are still good. I mean, they're still fun. Like I enjoy them. You know, they're not good enough for me to watch back to back like every year, but once in a blue moon I'll revisit these. So good fun ones. The Wolfman. I haven't seen the original since I was young, and the remake with like Anthony Hopkins and Benicio del Toro was not memorable.
No.
I think the concept of it is, here's the thing, it's just a werewolf story. The concept is the epitome of a werewolf story. There's nothing special about it, but I will say it's the original werewolf story.
Yeah, and the thing is, the probably, my opinion, other people agree, is probably the best werewolf movie is American Werewolf, because that has them like one of the most iconic
In London?
transformation scenes. It's called American Werewolf in London.
Oh, I know it. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it has one of the most, for like the 80s, the most iconic transformation scene, because they used to do a lot of practical effects. So weird, so creepy.
See, that came, I mean, that came out late 80s, like 89 or something. So I was only a few years old, but I was young enough to remember Werewolf in Paris, and I saw that when I got old enough to watch that, and that was pretty good.
Werewolf in London was 81.
Was it in 81? So then, like 10 years later, they made American Werewolf in Paris.
Probably later.
Yeah, I was like 95, probably
97.
97. Okay, I was gonna say mid 90s. Yeah. Okay. But the Wolfman is the OG version of that, and I would have to revisit. I bet it's still kind of freaky. The black and white thing with a guy dressed as a wolf, kind of roaming through the woods looking for someone. The concept, it could be very well done. I think it was a swing and a miss with the Anthony Hopkins version in like 2007 or whenever that was. I'm gonna say 2005 to 2007. It's probably later.
No, that was 2010.
Oh, 2010. Okay. I was a swing and a miss for sure. It doesn't. You know what? The Mummy's better than the Wolfman. I just really didn't enjoy Hellraiser that much. The concept was they had an original idea, so that's why it's under good concept. But I think Wolfman's right there. Dracula, the OG of the vampire movies. I will say,
I think of a good, scary Dracula.
I know. I've many vampire movies come to mind, but an actual Dracula movie.
Yeah, but like good scary.
Well, I think the problem is Dracula is kind of like a sorrow story. Like it's kind of like the story itself is sad.
Mm-hmm.
It's you kind of mourn a little bit for Dracula's character. He's just kind of in a bad like. I don't want to say he's in a bad situation, but it's kind of a sad story, like kind of the Phantom of the Opera. That's a sad story. The villain is kind of like the guy that you kind of feel for. The origin story of and like so. Anyway, so besides the story itself, I think the concept is good. I think it is one of the original monster movies, obviously. So it's definitely one of the classic horrors. And they took the kind of the lore of like vampire Dracula, because Dracula, wasn't it a novel? Wasn't it a book? Like
It was, yeah. Bram Stoker was the.
Yeah, so it's been around forever, and they just were the first ones to adapt it to film.
And going back to being original and being a book, talking more on Frankenstein. Did you know? Have you heard the backstory on how the book was written?
No, what happens?
When the book was written, it was like Mary Shelley who wrote it. Her husband was also a writer, and they were with like friends, and they were doing they're kind of on vacation together, and they challenged each other. This is a story I heard. I'm hoping um, I heard it several times. So they're basically like challenged each other to like, spend the night and come up with a story, and then they would kind of compare their stories. So in that challenge, she wrote the kind of the concept of.
Interesting. Okay. Did they read it together?
No, she wrote it on her own.
Oh, okay.
He's a writer in his own right. So,
Hmm.
she just trying to look up who her husband was. Percy Bysshe Shelley.
Hmm.
He was a poet.
He's a poet, and he
So,
knows it.
so she wrote it. That's a story I heard of how that was written. It's like I don't think it's a very long book. I mean, I don't think
Frankenstein.
She wrote
Okay.
night, but yeah, I don't think the original.
Gotta watch it then. I mean, I gotta read it. Yeah, in Dracula, I love the concept of it. It just it doesn't. I don't know. Some stories are just not going to adapt well to modern era. And I'm not saying make Dracula modern in 2022. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying even if you made this movie where it took place in like the 1800s or whenever it did, I don't know if today's audience would receive it very well. I think it just might be such a dated concept.
Well, they tried it with Dracula Untold. That was maybe over 5 years ago. They had Luke Evans in it, where they tried to tell the origin story of Dracula.
How was it?
It was okay, but it's kind of like an action movie.
See, that's not a horror. Like, yeah, totally. That's what you have to either you adapt it to like a love story or to a drama or it's an action movie. But as a horror movie itself, it's just not. I don't know. Maybe I could be wrong. Maybe there's some genius writer, screenplay writer, director out there that knows how to freaking terrify people and do it the right way. So maybe I'm completely wrong. But I think the concept itself, I think it's great. It's one of the most Dracula is one of the most famous, iconic Hollywood characters ever, right? Dracula. But yeah, that's gonna stay right there. It's just no memories of it really affecting me in any way. Paranormal Activity, I would say I'm gonna put it under good scares, dude. I'd put it right there. I'd put it under good scares because some of it's very freaky. I mean, there's been like 8 of them. There's been so many.
I just never got into them, so
because it's supernatural.
The found footage stuff never really interested.
But dude, some of the later ones were like really like they got better and better, and then some of them maybe they were bad and then they got good again. But there are some scenes like I remember one of the movies at the very end, like all the main characters die like in a very crazy freaky way. I thought, and it's obviously better than I think it's just I think the scare factor is better than Scream. Final Destination, I think the scare factor is better, but I think if it's right there because it's obviously supernatural. Whether you believe in that or not, then you can say it's real or not. It could be real. I know that's probably why you didn't watch it because it's supernatural.
I just never got into like found footage stuff. I mean, outside of like Blair Witch, which was one movie, and
we should have put Blair.
At the time, but
I should have put Blair Witch on here. Dang it!
That's not like a series. Well, they had like a sequel, but I wouldn't consider that.
You're right. They didn't make enough movies off it for it to be okay. But no, I think it's very freaky, and there's no music in it. There's no production behind it to build the audience's like tension. Does that make sense? So it's face value. It is what it is. And I think that if you watch it and you're into it, it's very freaky and it can be very scary at sometimes at some scenes. So I don't know. I mean, it's fun. It's not like the rewatchable aspect of it is not very good. Like I wouldn't continue going through these over and over again because once you see them, it's like all right. But I think I think there's some good scares in there. Child's Play.
I don't know. Like,
I'm gonna put this right. I'm gonna put this right here.
The first one was kind of good, then it just got goofy.
No, it's the concept is kind of good, of like a doll that comes alive but okay. So the original story, I think, isn't it a dude that dies and then his soul goes into the doll? Am I wrong?
It's either I'm trying to remember either
it was like an evil murderer,
or there's some ritual to try and I think to either bring his soul back to life or he tries to like do some spell or somebody does the spell to like hide his body or something, hide him, and then he gets transferred into the doll. So it's like some psychotic murderer is trapped inside the doll.
Right. Some satanic ritual thing that like a murderer goes into the doll. Dude, the first one, like, it's so not scary, and it's like I guess they could be fun, but it's not even that fun to me because you're like, I'm watching a bunch of adults being killed, murdered by a doll. Like, the doll. Okay, now I'm talking really semantics here. A doll doesn't have strength to like pick anything up to hurt. Like, it could probably hold a knife at best. My point is, it's weak. It can't it's like the weakest thing that could attack you. I would be more scared of a 7-year-old kid with a knife coming at me than Chucky. Really, it's like it's such it's I don't know, man. It's so dumb. It's so stupid to me. And because it's so ridiculously over the top stupid to me, I can't accept it as scary in any way. Not in any way. It's like it really is the dumbest thing. It's the I think
you have it in good concept.
You're right. You're right. It doesn't faze me whatsoever. The concept is even fucking stupid. You're right. Totally 100%. It's so bad. It's so dumb. Like, the more I've got to move on. I'm going to be upset the more I think about it. Okay. Exorcist has got to be Can't Sleep. It's got to be up there. Tell me. Talk to me.
Well, that one, it's just, I mean, especially if you like grew up religious too, and you just think about like demons. The problem is sometimes now when I think of The Exorcist, I think of This Is the End with Jonah Hill.
Right.
It kind of waters down the thought, but like, imagine just like this little girl who's just like, floating and her head spinning and she's vomiting and basically, this priest is just at his wit's end and it's I don't know, it's just creepy. It's one of those supernatural things that always kind of gets me because it's a thing that I think about where like I'm not imagining this little stupid doll coming out and getting me. That's not going to happen. I'm not imagining Frankenstein coming after me or Saw. Like, those are scary movies, but it's like if I'm trying to sleep, I don't think of that ever happened, right? Even though it's like talking about demons or talking about when you talk about demons and ghosts, like I know they're not maybe not real, like can happen, but it's also the kind of thing where I'm like, maybe it's real. Those are the kind of things that
right.
That extra is kind of the epitome of like, is it?
Well, and that's the thing, like, in a lot of these stories they say that they're based on true events. Like, I remember in high school in like 2004, The Exorcist of Emily Rose, and that was the revamp. That was they were bringing back, and then after that there was like a handful, like every couple years they come out with an Exorcist movie. But there was the original one, then they made a second one, and then I think they made one in the 90s, and then they took a long break before they started bringing them back. But I don't think any of them are bad. They don't fail. They successfully creep me out so much that I think about it often. When I'm done with that movie and I'm going home, I'm thinking about that, and I'm sure I can imagine, dude. You probably have you seen all of them?
No, I haven't seen.
I bet you didn't. I knew it.
Yeah, it's just one of those where that's the kind of epitome of like the stuff that
You don't like.
I can watch that will keep me up because I'll just think of like stuff like that actually happen. Whether it can or
I knew it.
like I don't know, like especially like it gets dark and I'm just like, oh, could something show up and appear and like it's like I don't think it's Chainsaw Dude's gonna show up, but like some ghost or some.
Oh, bro, if you saw some of them though, you would be that face, the face of Leatherface, bro. That'll keep you up for that would. I know you haven't seen him, but it would. This movie, I put this here for you, otherwise it'd be on the top list here for me. This is for me as well, top of Can't Sleep. It affects me to a personal level of like I've thought of myself of being possessed before after watching one of these, like when I was like 15 or something, and I was like, oh my gosh, what if like is someone gonna be possessed and like come after me? Like, what a terrifying thought. Yeah, man, that's up there. That's probably gonna stay on top of the list.
Scared on a mansion, so.
You do or I do?
You do.
Oh, I mean, it's haunted, bro. I'm in a haunted mansion. That's scary, bro. Grim grinning ghosts come out to terrify. I can't believe I said that.
For hitchhikers.
I love it, dude. I love it when I was like, during the D23 announcements, and it was the Hatbox Ghost, and you were like, who fucking cares?
Yes, Hatbox Ghost is finally here. Like I didn't know that was not a thing.
All right, Friday the 13th. I think it's gonna go under. I think it's behind Final Destination, under Good Scares, because it's a classic. It's a slasher movie. Nothing special about it. The concept, the story itself is nothing special, but it is kind of terrifying to see a man in a mask with a hatchet or a machete that just constantly goes after you. Like the idea that you can't destroy a being that its sole purpose in life is to murder you is terrifying, right? Like that's not that thought is not, doesn't settle well with the audience of like, now I gotta watch this person try to defend themselves against something that never dies. And it is kind of freaky. The fact anything behind a mask is kind of freaky. You know, Michael Myers is halfway scary because it's a mask. You don't know what's behind it. There's a mystery killer that never dies and brutally kills people and murders people and pops out of nowhere. Now the movies aren't great. But I think I've seen all of them. I'm gonna put it there under Good Scares. Before we get into Freddy vs. Jason, are you gonna put it there? Are you gonna keep it there? You want to move it?
No, I think it's fine because I think the early ones were definitely scary. What I was gonna talk about was I know it was the 8th movie or 7th or 8th movie. It's like Jason.
Wait a minute. Where they're in space.
That's X. That's Jason X.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
No, I'm thinking it was like 7 or 8, and he's like Jason Takes Manhattan.
Right? I don't think I saw that one.
And there's a scene where he's like going after a dude who's a boxer, or he's like a young guy who boxes, and the guy's like trying to fight him, and the guy just like starts, jabbing and doing, hooks and like right into his mask, and he's just like unloading on, to the point where he finally just wears himself out and he can't hit him anymore. He's just like exhausted. He's like, okay, man, come on, show me what you got. And then Jason just like punches and his head falls off, flies off. It's just so stupid.
That's awesome, man. That's very tongue-in-cheek right there.
Yeah.
That's
you remember who the original killer was?
No, I don't, but I do.
Movie.
Who?
The original killer in the first movie.
No, tell me. Oh, the mom.
Yeah, Jason's mom. Yeah.
He's not even in the movie. Yeah.
No, he appears like
he's a child.
He's like at the end of the movie, like it's all over
in the lake.
He's in the lake, and then his body comes out. So it was just like, it wasn't supernatural at all until the end. And
right.
it kind of did something else.
Yeah, it was just an upset mom that one of the camp counselors allowed her son to drown. Like that was the story, and she just went crazy on the camp. Yeah, you're right. Oh, I forgot about that. Which was kind of the first one is a very good standalone movie. I don't think even if they never made any other movie, I think it'd be a cult classic just based on kind of what it is. But I love the fact that they took that idea and then but if you look at the dates that they made them like every year and a half.
Hey, just cheap, inexpensive movies that make a bunch of money.
We made a bunch of money.
Paranormal Activity, right?
That you make one every season, every October release date. Every year for like 10 years straight, like you're golden. That's money right there. I should have put The Purge on here. Those are good. Okay. Anyways, because I love the Purge movies. Those aren't really horror movies, maybe. All right. Well, I like this. I very much enjoy. I enjoy the placement of where we put these the classic horror IPs. Maybe there's some we missed. We tried to discuss earlier probably the best ones we wanted to try to tier, but I think that's fine. Cool. I'm happy with it.